Dragon Ball has a lot of video games. What's more, a lot of these games contain their own original stories, separate from what we're used to. This includes original arcs, original characters, and of course, power-ups. And if you think Dragon Ball Super introduced too many new forms, well, wait until you see what the video games have given us. What I'm going to cover today is only a fraction of the various video game exclusive forms and techniques that exist within Dragon Ball, but I've chosen them either because they're relatively unknown and interesting, or they're just absurd. This isn't just to list off random forms either, it's more so to explain the context behind them, how the forms and techniques work, and how strong they are. Also, it's a great way to show how in-depth the lore of the video games are. This video will mostly be covering Super Dragon Ball Heroes given the scope of that series, but I've thrown some others in here too. Things will get crazier as we go on, so stick around. First, let's start with something that's relatively tame and not too crazy, Super Saiyan 3 Full Power. When it comes to Dragon Ball Heroes, a lot of people are familiar with Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker, a stronger version of Super Saiyan 4 as the name implies. But not a lot of people seem to know that there are stronger versions of Super Saiyan 3 as well, due to it being more obscure and only really used by two characters. Cumber and the Crimson Masked Saiyan, which is just Goku Black, each have accessed stronger variants of Super Saiyan 3 called Super Saiyan 3 Full Power. Kinda akin to Super Full Power Saiyan 4, it's a version of Super Saiyan 3 where the user can use all of their latent power contained in this form. When Cumber uses it, he looks as if he's berserk, but does showcase control at some point, and he's far more muscular than normal. Goku Black has an offshoot of this form too, using a Super Saiyan Rosé version of this. This form is simply called Super Saiyan Rosé Full Power, but it is just an evolution of Super Saiyan 3 Rosé. In this form, Goku Black grows a tail and also gets much more muscular, with red outlines around his eyes like Super Saiyan 4 would have. He's shown to gain this form in different ways, either through growing from battle or taking energy from other sources, whereas Cumber just gets it by getting it. He is kind of like Z Broly in a way, so it makes sense that he basically wills his way into new power. Next, let's go to Dragon Ball Online. In this game, Namekians seemingly have their own form which acts almost like their version of Super Saiyan. This form never gets any official name, but the Namekian using it will get red eyes alongside an intense purple aura. So within the fandom it's simply referred to as the red-eyed Namekian form. Weirdly enough, it looks similar to one of the class-up forms that exists in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, and if you're not familiar with that, in that game you could power up your avatar through various class-ups, which gets them to levels equivalent to Super Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan God, etc. The God class up in this game gives Namekians red eyes, but it does that for pretty much every other avatar too. It's essentially emulating Super Saiyan God. These two forms are separate. As for the red-eyed Namekian form, not much else is known about it and we haven't really seen too much of it since. To this day, it remains kind of a mystery. There's nothing known about its origins or anything else. Although, it wasn't the last Namekian form with red eyes either, like just look at Orange Piccolo. But hopefully we'll see it again someday and get some answers as to what it really is. Next we'll move into the world of Xenoverse. In Xenoverse 2, there's a relatively new form where Fu empowers someone through mind control and evil energy. It's referred to as Ultra Supervillain, and it's the next stage of the Supervillain mode, which is the upgraded version of the Villainous mode from Xenoverse 1. They all kind of work the same, this is just the strongest version of it so far. Essentially, it draws out the power of the possessed user while also making them act in an evil way, as the name implies. Besides the change in aura and eyes, the most notable effect of this specific form is the giant crystal popping out of the user's chest or somewhere else in their body. As of recording, Xenoverse 2 is somehow still getting DLC, which amazes me, and the story is still active. Right now, we've seen this form used with Dragon Ball Z Broly, Super Saiyan God Vegeta, Super Saiyan Rosé Goku Black, and Jiren in the upcoming DLC. And like I said, Xenoverse 2 is still active, so we'll definitely be seeing more of this. In a similar vein, there's something like that in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, particularly the Berserk Super Saiyan forms. There is also an evil type of energy that exists in Super Dragon Ball Heroes, utilized in kind of a similar way. This is mainly utilized by evil Saiyans like Cumber or Turles, who possess what is called an evil aura. It's that dark red aura you see around them a lot. This aura can be spread to others who don't already have it, particularly other Saiyans. They're the most susceptible. Fu at one point drains this energy from Cumber, who harbors it naturally, and Fu spreads it to Goku and Vegeta. And this made them go berserk. We've seen Goku in this berserk form while in Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2, and it gives a massive boost in power, while of course causing the user to lose control. Thankfully, a lot of these video game forms have very straightforward names, so as you expect, the Berserk Super Saiyan forms make the user go berserk. And we don't just see it once. Later on, Goku and Vegeta are affected by this again, but in their Super Saiyan Blue forms, although Vegeta gets affected by it another time after that too, while fighting Turles and Cumber who have their own evil auras. This time, while a Berserk Super Saiyan Blue, Vegeta is able to control it for himself, creating the controlled Berserk Super Saiyan Blue. It's controlled through Vegeta accepting and recognizing what the true nature of Saiyans is, which is perseverance and growing stronger. Turles and Cumber try to amplify this power by getting Vegeta to remember the evil he's committed in the past. But Vegeta is able to push against it and recognize his own path as a Saiyan. Which is kind of funny too, considering how developed this version of Vegeta is. This is one who actually went through all the events of Super and obviously everything before that too. But hey, I guess it's another case of Dragon Ball Heroes logic. Anyways, this form, even when controlled, can exhaust the user greatly. Outside of Super Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2, and Super Saiyan Blue, we haven't seen it used with any other Super Saiyan forms, but it could probably affect things like Super Saiyan 3 and Super Saiyan 4. Although it does make me wonder how that would interact with Super Saiyan God. We saw it with Blue, but not just the regular God form. We almost saw Vegito get affected by this too, but he actually created his own barrier to form against Fu in order to avoid this, complete with its own new aura. It seems like a case similar to how he protected himself from being absorbed by Buu in the Buu saga. Although, I think it would have been pretty cool to see Vegito affected by this and then controlling it like Vegeta did. Which would make a lot of sense because Vegeta's part of him, but I guess it's better to avoid it in general. I won't question Vegito's methods. The next power is kind of a form, kind of a fusion, and kind of a character all in one. Fuse Silas. For this form we need a backstory on a few characters. We won't go too off topic, but the context is necessary. In Super Dragon Ball's World Mission, there's an antagonist named Silas. He initially was a galactic patrolman, but also at some point became the first time patroller under Cronoa. In an attempt to rewrite history, he of course required more power. He created his own AI life form called Oms, who is basically Cell on crack. He could absorb other warriors and assimilate that into himself, initially getting Cell and Frieza absorbed. He then acquires Goku Black and Hit, becoming this. If any of you play Dokkan, these forms of Oms both appeared as cards. Same with what comes after, because Oms eventually absorbs his own creator Silas, although Silas is able to regain control while also retaining the power of the fusion. This creates Fuse Silas, with the power of everyone I just mentioned. Also, of course, making him look vastly different than his normal self. Theoretically, Oms could have just absorbed any other fighter to grow stronger, and then Silas could have used that power for himself. Be sure to click that like button so I can absorb your power too for the algorithm. Better yet, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. The next form technically isn't from the video games, but I'm going to cover it because it does show up in the video games. It's God Broly, aka Broly God. It originates from an attraction at Universal Studios Japan called the Real 4D at the Super Tenkaichi Budokai. In this attraction, Goku even fuses with the entire audience, which is insane, but unfortunately that never shows up in the video games, although I will mention it's called God Fusion Goku. But as cool as that is, it's besides the point. He uses this to defeat Broly, who's using this God Broly form. And like a lot of things involving Z Broly, this doesn't really have a solid explanation. What I can say is that this is somewhat of a godly form for Broly, as the name implies. It looks like his regular legendary Super Saiyan form with much longer hair. Different from his legendary Super Saiyan 3 form too, because he actually has eyebrows and his bangs in the front are different. That's the most notable part about him. You can see those really long bangs in the front. Next, we have a form for Cell. It's called Cellin. In Dragon Ball Z Budokai, there are what-if stories, kind of like what other video games cover and like what I cover too on my channel. In one story, Cell ends up absorbing Krillin instead of Android 18, and weirdly enough, it ends up working. Well, not as intended, but it does make Cell transform into Cellin, a strange-looking version of Cell where he's not quite perfect, but seemingly beyond his semi-perfect form due to his physical changes. He looks more like a Cell Jr. if anything. And as you'd expect, a lot of his design also takes from Krillin's design, with Cell taking on the colors of Krillin's skin and gi, losing his nose, getting dots on his head, and he even gets the Turtle School kanji on his chest. This might seem like a video game exclusive thing, but in GT, Cell does actually try to absorb Goku, but we never see it come to fruition. But this might mean that Cell can absorb other organic beings besides cyborgs, and I don't mean just stabbing them with his tail and taking their energy, I mean actually absorbing them and assimilating with them in this manner, creating an entirely new form. It leaves a lot open to interpretation. While we've mostly covered forms so far, let's cover a technique. In the game Dragon Ball Fusions, more than 2 characters can fuse, actually up to 5. This creates the aptly named 5-way fusion, and as the game name implies, it involves a lot of fusion, and we see a ton of characters fuse that have never fused before. But this 5-way fusion dance is interesting because it results in a few separate fusions between characters. One we see is a fusion of the Ginyu Force. They're actually one of the first groups of 5 to do it. There's also a fusion between Tekka, the main character of the game, alongside Kid Goku, Trunks, Pan, and Goten, as well as another fusion between another game character named Pinich, along with Frieza, Cell, and 2 other game characters. The latter fusion is controlled by Frieza and Cell, so it's an evil one. But this 5-way fusion, aka Ultra Fusion, is of course a really potent method of combining power. Next is one of my favorite and one of the most absurd when it comes to lore, and also one of the most absurd in terms of power. In the Big Bang mission of Super Dragon Ball Heroes, Fu gains the Universe Seed, an object that Hearts previously had that gathers energy from other people and can power up its holder. However, the main use of the seed is to grow the Universe Tree, a supermassive tree that can create its own universe. Again, very straightforward names here. But think of this as the Tree of Might, but with universes instead of planets. It will actually siphon power from other universes. Goku fought Fu after the Universe Tree became active, and this was a version of Goku that went through Dragon Ball Super storyline. The tree granted power to Fu, but Goku was able to cut one part of the tree and utilize the power for himself. It got absorbed into his Super Saiyan Blue form, creating a new form with a pretty straightforward name, Super Saiyan Blue Universe Tree Power. This gave Goku enough power to defeat Fu. In the manga version of events, the final attack is particularly crazy, with Goku essentially creating a massive spirit bomb, powered by this form, and it's called the Universe Tree Ball Big Bang, which in this version defeats Fu and destroys the tree. This form is the strongest variant of Super Saiyan Blue by a large margin, and is one of the strongest Saiyan forms in general. Similarly, Fu of course uses the power of the Universe Tree for himself. A few demon characters in Dragon Ball Heroes obtain the position of Dark King, which gives them great power and new forms to go along with it. As the name implies, they rule over the demon realm, and we've seen this used by Meki Kabura, Demigra, and Fu. There's a full power variant of this, as well as a version where the user unleashes time power in various ways. But the craziest and strongest variant of it comes from Fu. He tried to gain the power of the Time Birds, who are godly animals that can control time, which is as crazy as it sounds. Anyways, there are two Time Birds, Toki Toki, who is the good one that lives with Cronoa, and Dogi Dogi, the dark counterpart that lives with Fu. Fu absorbs Dogi Dogi and then reverses in age, becoming what looks to be a child version of himself. While still a Dark King, he eventually fully absorbs Dogi Dogi, gaining wings and naturally more power. He then is able to harness the power of the Universe Tree, now having three huge sources of power, being a Dark King, absorbing Dogi Dogi, and siphoning energy from the Universe Tree. This power is so strong that Hearts, who formerly used the power of the Universe Seed in order to stop the gods, believes that Fu has actually gone beyond Zeno's level. And remember, Universe Tree Goku fought this version of Fu, so do with that what you will. Like I said, there are way more video game exclusive forms beyond these, and there's way more to video game lore in general. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how powerful Dragon Ball characters are in the video game stories, and how strong the various forms and techniques in those games are, as well as how absurd the lore is. Which form is the coolest to you? Is it one that I listed here, or something else? Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.